Precious Lord, take my hand, lead me on, let me stand. I am tired, I'm weak, I am worn through the storm, through the night. Lead me on to the light. Take my hand, precious Lord, and lead me on. When the darkness appears and the night draws near, when the day is past and gone, by the river I stand. Hold my feet, God, and take my hand. Take my hand, precious Lord, lead me on. What a fellowship, what a joy divine, leaning on the everlasting arms. What a blessedness, what a peace is mine, leaning on the everlasting arms. Oh, leaning, safe and secure from all alarms, leaning, leaning on the everlasting arms. What have we to dread? What have we to fear when we're leaning on the everlasting arms? We have blessed peace with our precious Lord so near, leaning on the everlasting arms. Oh, we are leaning, safe and secure from all alarms, leaning, oh, leaning. We all are leaning on God's everlasting, everlasting arms.
Well, thank you so much, Dana, and welcome to the 2024 MAAH Stone Book Awards. You can be a little bit more excited than that. All right. I'm Dr. Noelle Trent, President and CEO of the Museum of African American History, and it is my joy to be here this evening. I want to thank Dana Whiteside for opening us up this evening. Dana comes to us from the Handel and Hayden Society, where he'll be featured in their concert, Crossing the Deep, in January at Jordan Hall. Crossing the Deep is an immersive concert exploring the relationship between classical composers in Europe with Negro spirituals created by enslaved Africans in America. Please follow the Handel and Hayden Society for more information. But I want to just pause and reflect on what just happened. It's not just a fun way to open up the MAAH Stone Book Award, because let's be honest, Black historians don't get enough shine, okay? And so here in the Boston African Meeting House, the oldest existing Black church building in the country, we choose to celebrate Black scholarship on African American history. But for those of you who are unfamiliar with us, let me introduce you to us. This building was largely built by and for people of African descent. And it started as the Free African Baptist Church in 1805 in the basement of Faneuil Hall. Now, I'm the daughter of a Baptist minister, so I can say some things. I won't say everything, but I can say some things. And one of the things that, if you're unfamiliar with the Black Baptist tradition or the Black Protestant tradition, we believe in a practice called call and response. All right? So if something feels good to you, if someone says something that you agree with, you can say amen. You can say right on. Now, those of you who do not come from this community and are a little startled by it, nobody means anything by it. Nobody's going to hurt you. But here in this house, this is how we affirm each other. This is how we celebrate. And so when we're in your house, we'll obey your rules. But tonight, you are in our house celebrating scholarship about our community, and we're going to do it our way. So you may wonder, how did the MAAH Stone Book Award come into existence? And it started in 2017 through a partnership with Kathy Stone and is funded by a generous grant from the Stone Foundation. Now, we have evolved from one prize in the first year for $25,000 to a $50,000 prize to the winner and $10,000 to the two finalists as of 2021. It is by far the largest prize for nonfiction writing focusing on African American history and culture. So when I tell you we celebrate, we not only celebrate, we let you know we really appreciate the hard work you put into these books. So I encourage you to visit our Stone Book Award website to learn more about our previous winners and submissions. Now, I'm sure you're wondering, how were the winners selected? No, I am not involved in the process, so do not complain to me or talk to me about how I could help. I am not involved in the process. But works were submitted that were published between April 1st, 2023 to March 31st, 2024, and were submitted by publishers and literary agents. This year, we received 118 submissions. And our 5 jurors, reviewed all of them. We really like our jurors. And they represent the finest scholars in the country, representing various types of institutions of higher learning, from Ivy League schools, state schools, private institutions, and HBCUs. And it just so happens that the fabulous Howard University is also involved in the judging process. Thank you, thank you. This year's award was our most competitive yet. Out of that 118, it was narrowed down to a list of 14, and we are privileged to have the top 3 with us this evening. So I know you're anxious to meet our finalists and this year's authors. So our finalists are Barbara Savage for Mers Tate, The Global Odyssey of a Black Woman Scholar. Please stand. My fondness for her book has nothing to do that she wrote about one of the first women history professors at Howard University. Nothing at all. Our other finalist is Chad L. Williams, The Wounded World, W.E.B. Du Bois, and the First World War. Please stand. You know, one year they're going to let me have some drum rolls or some soundtracks for this next part. And the 2024 MAAH Stone Book Award winner is Victor Luckerson for Built from the Fire, the epic story of Tulsa's Greenwood District, America's Black Wall Street. I tried to tell him, we're really good for your ego as a scholar and a writer. I'm just saying. Now, this award, as I mentioned before, would not be possible without the work of our jurors. Dana A. Williams, Chair, Howard University. William Sturkey, University of Pennsylvania. Charles W. McKinney, Jr., Rhodes College. Courtney R. Baker, University of California, Riverside. And Jesse McCarthy, Harvard University. Now, we're also grateful for... Stand up. They want the jurors who are present to stand up. I told you we embody the Black church, so if you don't stand up to get your shine, you will be asked to stand to get your shine. So just be ready, everybody. All right, and we're also grateful for our honorary jurors, two of which are here with us this evening. Sarah Lawrence Lightfoot, Harvard University. Paula Giddings, writer and scholar extraordinaire. Gary Bennett, Duke University. Paula Johnson, Wellesley College. Ibram X. Kendi, Boston University. Suzanne Nozell, Penn America. And Lee Pelton, the Boston Foundation. Now, you can see we have such a great group of supporters who make this award possible. But there is one person that none of this would be possible without. So please join me in welcoming honorary juror, collaborator, visionary, and altogether fabulous woman, Kathy Stone. Your water's right here.
Oh, that's fine. It'll be fine down. Good evening. And are you enjoying yourselves tonight? Yes. Well, I have a very short, sweet message, which is to thank everybody associated with the award, beginning with Dr. Noel Trent. Dr. Trent is leading the museum in new directions, taking it new places, and bringing it to the national prominence that all of us know it deserves, and that the public and with me, oh, that's great. We have so many friends here. It's so nice to see that. Joining me tonight is my husband, Jim, who has been a part of the prize from the beginning. And Sonia Plessett, who's the president of the, no, I'm the president, who's the director of the Stone Foundation. And we all collectively are so proud to be associated with this award. You have heard already our acknowledgement of the jurors, having read and reviewed 118 submissions carefully and with thought and care. So I don't think it's too bad to ask you guys to rise again. And we especially want to thank Dana Williams, who has been with us from the very beginning. But also with us from the very beginning is Pam Waterman. Along with Michelle Samplem Salgado, who is her sidekick in this, Pam has created this museum award with her intelligence, her creativity, her humor, and her love of knowledge. And if we feel so fortunate in the way that things happen randomly, you come across a person, you think, well, they may be good for this, it's a part-time job, and they end up being spectacular, born to the task. So with a wonderful crew and the pride that Jim and I have in this award, I will turn this over to Dana Williams. And before I do, of course, I want to congratulate our award winners. Each one adds so much to the intellectual life of the nation, to which we are all devoted. Thank you.
I say thank you again to Kathy and Jim for their support of the award. As a two-time HBCU graduate, Grambling State and Howard Universities, I have no shortage of books I wish existed about the remarkable faculty who served these institutions with tremendous honor and dignity. Until Murs Tate, The Global Odyssey of a Black Woman, rose from the archives and Barbara D. Savage's mind and pen or keyboard, Murs Tate was one such faculty member whose name we had heard often, but about whom we knew far too little. Savage's study of Murs Tate is a fascinating and highly original study of a single, underrepresented, underappreciated figure whose life touched so many facets of Black history. This book is both rare and revelatory in its subject and findings. It eschews the growing tradition of quick, lightly researched books about well-known Black figures that can flood the marketplace at the most inconvenient time. This book, contrastingly, is a dutiful love and labor of love. Barbara Savage helps us to pay careful attention to Murs Tate's life, and results reveal a profound story of a Black woman intellectual making her way in the 20th century world. Its beauty is only multiplied by the fact that its author, too, is a Black woman intellectual who has made her world in the American Academy. The book is exemplary of the spirit of the Stone Book Award in that it recognizes both the work of Barbara Savage as a historian and scholar in our field, and the historic place of Murs Tate in that same intellectual genealogy. This book is beautifully written, well-researched, and highly accessible. I commend you to read it, although we know that you are here because you intend to read them all. Barbara Savage is alone in her command of Murs Tate's life and work, and in this sense, it met what the judges expected about a book that was written so well that when we reached the last page, we were all convinced that it could not have been written as well by anyone else. Please join me in congratulating Barbara Savage for the remarkable achievement that is Murs Tate, The Global Odyssey of a Black Woman Scholar.
Thank you, Dana. Thank you so much, Dana. Thank you all for being here, and thank you, Dana, for those generous words. It seems so fitting, especially coming from you as a scholar from Howard, as you've said. I know that Dr. Trent is also a Howard alum, as she has made plain to us. So that feels great. And I say this all the time everywhere I go, but I want to say it here because it's so true. And that is that my entire scholarly career has depended on the rich archives and the excellent staff at the Moreland Spingarn Center at Howard, who first welcomed me there when I was a graduate student, and I've been doing work there for over 30 years. So that's my first expression. Without the archives, history and historians don't really exist. I'm grateful to all the judges. Thank you. They're all very busy scholars themselves. They made time to do this really important work. And certainly a special congratulations to both Victor and Chad for their extraordinary books on topics as relevant now as ever. My gratitude, of course, tonight also goes to the museum itself, which is hosting us so beautifully here tonight, and to the Stone family for its philanthropic commitments, including the generosity for this gift. Black history still remains an erased part of our shared history, so all of the work that's done here is so crucial in that way. And the administrative staff so beautifully create ways to publicize these books and to honor all the books that have been nominated. And I want to conclude on a quick personal note, if I might. I'm a child of the rural Southern Virginia of the 1950s and 1960s, and because my home state's resistance to school desegregation, I started my formal education in a one-room school that was named after my maternal great-grandmother's family, who had helped build that school in the late 1930s. So all of my elementary and secondary education was in all-black schools in Southampton County, Virginia, perhaps best known as the home of Nat Turner. That's where I was first taught Black history by dedicated, underpaid Black teachers trained at the historically Black colleges in Virginia and North Carolina. I also was among the earliest affirmative action students, and I'm proud to have been an affirmative action student, I might say, who entered predominantly white institutions for college. And in my case, I also was in the first class of women at the University of Virginia. Now, I say all of that. I say all of that not to talk about myself, which I was raised not to do, but to be able to say here what I say every chance I get, that the best teachers I ever had were those in my classrooms in Southampton County. And that's where I first learned to write, under the firm hand of English teachers who taught us Langston Hughes and Gwendolyn Brooks and James Weldon Johnson right alongside Hamlet and Macbeth. And it is their example of dedication that I saw in Merce Tate and that I have tried to bring to my own work as a teacher and a scholar devoted to Black history, a calling I felt compelled to answer in midlife despite an earlier detour through law school. The sacrifices of my earliest teachers and those of my own family have made it possible for me to stand before you this evening, so my deepest gratitude is reserved for them. So thank you all so much for celebrating our work and the lives of the Black men and women we honor in our writing. Thank you all.
Good evening. I have to say, this is, it is a lot of work, it is a lot of reading, but I wouldn't miss being a member of this jury for the world. It's an honor and a great pleasure to serve, to be able to read all of these extraordinary works and to honor them. In our field of study, Writing a book about W.E.B. Du Bois is something like the equivalent of proposing to climb Mount Everest. Everything about Du Bois is towering. The scope of the life, the scope of the work, the immense legacy, the central importance he still holds in our lives as an emblem of intellectual rigor and engaged political struggle. As you can see, the book that we are honoring this evening, Chad L. Williams's The Wounded World, is an imposing tome, a work of immense labor and meticulous research that meets the measure of his subject. A book of this size might seem forbidding to the average reader, but let me reassure you, one of the many miracles of this magnificent book is that it reads like a first-rate biography. It is not only a great achievement of scholarship, it is beautifully written and accessible to anyone who wishes to discover Du Bois in a new light. The theme of Professor Williams's book could, alas, not be any more timely. Because at the heart of this book is Du Bois's reckoning with war and the forces that perpetuate it, and the question of whether and how the Black freedom struggle can be a counterforce that restrains the worst of human nature and the madness of states bent on furthering conflict. By unveiling for us the history of Du Bois's failure to complete a book he wanted to call The Black Man and the Wounded World, Williams has recovered an essential and profound piece of Du Bois's legacy and mission with important and poignant lessons for our own day. This book has been hailed by Honoré Fanon Jeffers, by David Levering Lewis and Nell Irvin Painter. The historian Robin D.G. Kelly has called it a genuine masterpiece. As a jury, we were thrilled to receive this book, and it is our great honor to be recognizing Professor Williams this evening at the Stone Awards. Congratulations.
Oh my goodness. You're right, it's a big book, sorry. But it's Du Bois, like you said. Thank you, Jesse, for that wonderful introduction, for capturing the essence of what I tried to accomplish in this project. Thank you, everyone, for being here this evening. I want to extend my sincere gratitude to everyone associated with the Museum of African American History. Dr. Trent, thank you for your tireless work and advocacy. The Stone Book Award, thank you to the Stone family and Stone Foundation, everyone associated with this award. We don't write books for the accolades, for the awards, for the prizes, but if there was an award that I would want to get, it would be this one. So my deep gratitude to the jurors for their labor, for the difficult yet incredibly rewarding task of reading so many excellent books. It is a tremendous honor to be recognized alongside Professor Barbara Savage for your marvelous book on Mayor's Tate. And I want to congratulate Victor for your incredibly powerful book on Tulsa's Greenwood District. Want to thank everyone associated with Frost Sharson Garreau, my publisher, especially my editor, Eric Chinsky, my literary agent extraordinaire, Tanya McKinnon. Biggest thanks go to my teachers, everyone who was associated with me becoming a historian from high school through college, writing my senior honors thesis with Brenda Stevenson, having the great Nell Laverne Painter as my advisor. I carry all of their brilliance with me. I especially want to thank my family, my wife Madeline, my kids Gabriel, Michael, and Layla. They had to put up with me and Du Bois for a long time, so I'm incredibly grateful for their support and love. Indeed, this book really goes all the way back to when I was in graduate school, when I had more hair and less gray hairs. I'm not going to date myself, but starting work on my dissertation, I visited the University of Massachusetts Amherst and quite literally stumbled upon an 800-page manuscript by W.E.B. Du Bois on the Black experience in World War I that no one had written about. Kind of every graduate student's dream. And as much as I found this fascinating, I have to admit that writing a book about somebody writing a book that they didn't finish felt kind of strange at many points along this journey. So what is this book about? I had to ask myself that question many times. And Jesse, I think you really got to the heart of it. Yes, this is a book about the great W.E.B. Du Bois. Yes, it's a book about World War I, its importance, its historical significance, its legacy. But it's about much more. It's about the tension, the ongoing tension of being Black and being American. It's about democracy, what it has meant and what it continues to mean for Black people and other oppressed peoples. It's about our world. It's about a world that is wounded by war, by empire, by white supremacy, by economic inequality. And ultimately, it's about our commitments to democracy, to fighting to fix our wounded world, and how sometimes in doing so, we make the wrong decisions, how sometimes we even fail. But in that failure, we grow, and our convictions strengthen. That is ultimately W.E.B. Du Bois, someone who lived 95 remarkable years and committed his life to democracy, to fixing the wounded world. And that's what I hope to take away from what I've written, and I hope that we can take away from what I had written, especially in this moment when so much seems to hang in the balance, what we can learn from Du Bois and how we can continue his unfinished work. Thank you, everyone.
Hello and good evening. It is an honor to be here with you all and really a delight to introduce this year's MAAH Stone Book Award winner, Victor Luckerson's volume, Built from the Fire, the epic story of Tulsa's Greenwood District, America's Black Wall Street, 100 years in the neighborhood that refused to be erased, is an admirable addition to that storied list of award winners. My fellow jurors and I were impressed by many aspects of Mr. Luckerson's book, including its thoroughness in tracing the history of a neighborhood from its fraught inception as a city of promise built upon a legacy of broken promises to the indigenous and ancestral caretakers of the so-called Indian Territory that was renamed Oklahoma. Its timeliness in narrating how a status quo of racial supremacy so easily curdles into an extensive project of genocide. How capitalism is not the only nor the primary form of African American self-determination. Its long view of Tulsa's Greenwood district as an enduring neighborhood, and its illustration of interlocked families, businesses, beliefs, and ambitions that surpass and survive in the face of a ruthless and antagonistic American individualism. In our discussion, my fellow jurors and I noted that Luckerson's book offers something fresh. It deftly avoids rehearsing the classist respectability politics that have distracted studies of Greenwood's ongoing diversities. Built from the Fire instead explores the textures of Black community and recognizes them as a wealth in and of themselves. Importantly, Luckerson's historiography of Greenwood's African American community does not end with the unresolved, unrepaired assault on it in 1921. Recounting the work of local activist Regina Goodwin, a descendant of massacre survivors, Luckerson observes that, quote, "In a state and a nation first scaffolded by laws meant to dehumanize Black people, Regina insisted on using those very same legal tools to build bridges to opportunity for her community. If the bridge was out, she'd find a detour and light a lantern for those who came after her. For the people of Greenwood, for Black Oklahomans, for Black Americans, strategy never stopped. What matters is that the newest person who has been touched by the story of Greenwood will feel, whenever she walks the streets in pride or in protest, that she is at home," end quote. A people of conviction, like the African Americans of Tulsa, Oklahoma, cannot be so easily destroyed. Thank you, Victor Luckerson, for your work in recounting and preserving the story of African American community, and congratulations on your very deserved reward.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Wow. Thank everybody so much for this opportunity. This is my first book and my first day in Boston, so really an amazing day at first. Now, I remember when the shortlist came out and I got an email from the Stone Book Awards, and it said Dr. Luckerson on it. I said, "Oh, I'm not a doctor. That sounds good, though. I like that." Actually coming to this from the journalism side of the equation, and I think what's really important to remember is that whether you're a journalist, a historian, or somewhere in between, we're all chronicling this history. You know, we're all trying to capture this story in a way that's honest, in a way that's authentic, and in a way that really kind of preserves Black life. Something I realized diving into Oklahoma's history is that our story is often forgotten in so many ways, and so it really is an honor to be up here, being honored for preserving this history, and to be here with scholars like Barbara and Chad who preserve the history so well as well. I also have to mention when I got the phone call about this. So if you've written in books, you're in publishing, people might know. Y'all know Oprah's book club, I'm sure. So apparently Oprah calls people from a random number when she tells them that they're in the book club. So for the last year and a half, I've been answering all random numbers I always get. Waiting, hoping. And one day in August, I got a call from a random number. And it wasn't Oprah, it was Pam. But Oprah doesn't give a $50,000 cash prize, so I'm glad it was from Pam. So just to thank some of the people who've made this moment possible, thank you so much to Dr. Noel Trent, to Pam as well, the whole staff of the Museum of African American History, to the Stones and the Stone Foundation, to all of y'all for coming out tonight. I also want to give a special shout out to Carmen Fields, who's here. Y'all know Carmen, longtime Boston journalist, Pulitzer Prize winner, and a one-time writer for a little paper called the Oklahoma Eagle. So, in my time working on this book, I actually wrote a little bit for the Eagle too, so we're both Eagle alums. We have that in common. I'm going to just do a really brief reading from the book, actually. Part of what the book attempts to do, and which Courtney captured so well in her comments, is go beyond just the race massacre. I really think about this as a story about the before and the after, and really trying to define Greenwood beyond those terms. So I'm just going to read a little bit of a few sections from the book. This is actually from chapter 1, page 1, the very beginning of the story. The first chapter is called Do Not Hesitate, But Come. They called it the Eden of the West. When boosters crafted tales of the land known as the Creek Nation, Indian Territory, and eventually Oklahoma, they wrote of fertile soil that could grow any crop, yielding shoulder-high acres of wheat and melons ready to burst in their succulent ripeness. They described a righteous realm where any newcomer would have equal chances with the white man, while those who remained in the old world, the deep south, were slaves, allowed to be killed at any time. Most important to James Henry and Carly Goodwin, they spoke of good schools for colored children, places where the seeds of prosperity could be sown in the one terrain that could not be burned, stolen, or erased by an interloper, the terrain of the mind. Now I'm going to read from chapter 7, The Massacre. Mary Jones Parrish was trying to cocoon her daughter Florence in the cushion of a dual-fold sofa, hoping that the furniture would shield her from a stray bullet. Looking out a south-facing window of the Woods building, she could see white men firing their rifles from atop the Middle State Mill on First Street, across the railroad tracks. They'd even hauled a machine gun up there. When she heard a lull in the gunfire, she took Florence's small hand and guided her out of their apartment. Mother and daughter ran northward toward Standpipe Hill, another knoll topped by a large water tower that marked the western boundary of the neighborhood. Many of the craftsman-style homes that lined the street were already on fire, with families' personal effects strewn across their yards. Towering above the homes on the hill was another machine gun manned by several white soldiers. Greenwood was surrounded. And this is from the epilogue. These are the very last words I wrote when I was putting the book together in January of 2023, just last year. Right is slow and tardy, while wrong is aggressive. Attorney and race massacre survivor B.C. Franklin wrote in his autobiography. That's the only way it can survive. For more than a century, Greenwood has been grappling with wrong in all its combative forms. Wickedness flamed white hot in 1921, but the embers continued to burn long after. In relief aid withheld during the Great Depression. In wartime jobs denied during World War II. In urban planning brochures featuring smiling black faces and words laden with double meaning. Blight, renewal, progress. Tulsa wanted badly to forget, but Greenwood demanded the city remember. First the city, then the state, and finally the nation recognized that what happened in Tulsa was not a bizarre outlier in the arc of American history towards justice. It was a warning buried in the past that any society, no matter how noble it purports to be, can be racked by hate and violence that destroys people's lives and livelihoods, and see it rationalized from the highest seats of power. Wrong is aggressive. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you so much for this award. Thank you.
Good evening. Pam Waterman does not believe it, but I tell her every year, and I'll tell you again, this is my favorite event. I really love it. And so I'm thrilled to be here, honored to be having a conversation with Victor Lukerson about his fantastic book. It is fantastic. So if you're like me, and you think you knew something about Tulsa, you probably thought you were really informed because you knew that there was a plane in addition to folks on the ground. So that's how I felt. Well, I know this story, okay? I pick up this book and realize I didn't know anything. Victor Lukerson has taken this book to places unknown and to peoples whose names I had never heard before, and placed them in a context that is broadly contextual, that involves economics, involves politics, of course, involves the personal family stories of all of these people. So the story that you probably think you know has been encased in amber, and what he has done is taken a hammer and broken it open. That's the book. It's that good.
You're going to put that on the next edition of it, your quote.
So what we talked before, and what we wanted to do is hit a few points that he really wants to make sure that you understand about it. And one of them is that massacre, that night of horror. You wanted us to really understand the level of involvement of the police. So talk about that.
Sure. So there's been a lot of earlier recreations of the race massacre. You might have seen the Watchmen TV show, for example, which recreates the race massacre on HBO in vivid terms. But when I wrote the book and sort of had to tackle that subject, I really wanted to follow the role of police in those 36 hours or so. I think it's important for a lot of reasons. One reason is the fact that there's ongoing litigation right now in Tulsa about who's responsible for this race massacre and can anybody be held accountable. There's a pretty fair argument to say that the City of Tulsa Police Department and the city itself is accountable because they failed to protect Greenwood. If you think about how the race massacre played out, there was a attack on a black man named Dick Rowland was falsely accused of rape. He's placed into a county jail. A lynch mob forms. And as things sort of spiraled out of control in Greenwood, the police chose to deputize random members of White Tulsa. They handed out badges, and in fact, the police chief actually said that he didn't know the names of all these folks he deputized. You know, I talked about in my reading these machine guns that were used. The National Guard brought out machine guns into Greenwood and used them to fire on and intimidate black folks in the neighborhood. These are all institutions that existed then and exist today. And so for me, I think that following that thread was really important because I think sometimes people can think of history as trivia or something that's just for entertainment, edification, but it has a lot of legal implications as well. And so I wanted to, and also y'all didn't see my book. My book's also very, very thick, a lot of footnotes in it. And so I wanted people to be able to say, okay, if I want to follow these threads further, let me look at the police reports. Let me look at the National Guard reports. And so the book really captures, from a legal perspective, the role that police played that night.
A pause before we go to the second point that you wanted to make to let everybody know here. Victor moved to Tulsa so that he could really embed himself in the community, in the story, so that what is so fantastic for me are all the names attached to every single movement that happened in that community. I didn't know these names. Talk about just trying to break in, I guess, into the community, to be trusted, because this community had a lot not to trust.
That's very much true. So the book follows many families and people, but in particular, I follow the Goodwin family. There's one family that's been on Black Wall Street for more than 100 years. They moved to Greenwood from rural Mississippi in 1913. J.H. Goodwin, the family patriarch, built a grocery store there. They've since then owned a family newspaper, a lawyer's office, a gambling enterprise. You want to know more about that? Read the book. But they've really been sort of stalwarts on that block. And so I remember when I first sort of encountered the Goodwins, Jim Goodwin is actually the owner of the newspaper. He's an 84-year-old attorney, as well as on the newspaper. I remember going to visit the office of the paper. It's on Greenwood Avenue. And the Eagle is actually in this old kind of refurbished auto garage. And so if you think about how the auto garage looks, there's kind of like the auto entrance with the big gates, you know, and then there's like the door entrance. So I was supposed to meet Mr. Goodwin at 10 a.m. for a meeting, and I went to the auto garage side. And so I remember I called him, and I was like, he was like, where are you? I'm like, here. He's like, you're late. No, I'm not. I'm here. And so I was a little bit late for the meeting, but luckily Mr. Goodwin was actually really generous with his time and his knowledge. And so he was the first one to unfurl for me this really incredible family story they have, this legacy they have in the neighborhood. And so, you know, from there, I actually ended up moving to Tulsa in 2019 from my job in Atlanta. And for me, I think really getting to know folks there was really important. Everybody probably remembers how much attention there was on Tulsa in 2020 and 2021. President Trump visited Tulsa, the centennial happened, and so there were dozens, hundreds of people trying to get the story. But then the fact that I had moved there and committed myself to being there made folks see me a little bit differently. I actually just moved away from Tulsa. I live in Washington, D.C. now. About a month ago, I moved. And there's this guy named Terry who's a tour guide. And so they're kind of like the official tour guides in Greenwood with some of the museums, but Terry's kind of the guy in the corner who knows what's going on, you know. He'll tell you who the hustlers were, where they were doing the moonshine, all that. And so me and Terry got our own hustle going. He does the tour, I saw the book, you know. And so I told Terry I was leaving Tulsa, and he was like, man, you always gonna be from Tulsa now. And so having somebody like that who isn't sort of one of the quote-unquote heroes of the neighborhood, he's not on the Mount Rushmore of Greenwood, but he felt represented in the story I had told. And so I think having folks like that connect with the story means more than anything.
Yes, please, come on. I failed Pamela Waterman's instruction, and I didn't introduce myself, so pause. I'm Callie Crossley. I host a program called Under the Radar with Callie Crossley, and I'm the co-host of the Culture Show on GBH in Boston. I also write commentaries for GBH, and I'm also one of the producers on one of my favorite projects, history projects, Eyes on the Prize, America's Civil Rights Movement. Okay. So going back to the trust, that's the second point you wanted to make. The community's trust, and I was blown away by how many times the community is trying to rebuild on the smallest level and some of the biggest levels, and at every point, their trust was broken. I would get so hopeful. I was tense reading some parts of it, and then there you go. So talk about how that trust in that community, yet they persist, kept being broken over and over again, and by whom?
Yeah, so I think one thing that I noticed, I remember when I was first starting the project, and I would go to city council meetings, or there's a mass grave search happening in Tulsa, some of y'all might be familiar with. There was so much frustration and anger among people in the community, and I think sometimes if you don't know the context, you might think, why are these folks so mad, you know? The city's trying to help them, the city's trying to do X, Y, Z, they got these plans, you know, what's the issue? And I realized during my research that in fact the city had failed on so many promises in the past, you know. The city had failed to provide jobs and resources during the Great Depression to black folks. The city had failed to give them jobs during World War II. Sort of most tragically, the city had misled a lot of folks about urban renewal being a positive thing for black neighborhoods when in fact it was used to destroy neighborhoods and clear out land for higher value properties. And so when you kind of get that fuller context, I think it makes the modern frustration and skepticism of city plans more obvious. And so for me, I think it was important to show not only the way those institutions have in many ways failed Greenwood, but how they built up their own institutions too. That's not just entrepreneurship, which is really important. It's also activist groups. It's also protesting. The book really follows a lot of different modes and models for how you can engage as a citizen in a community. And that was important for me too. I really love what Courtney said about sort of exploding the idea of what I call kind of the myth of black excellence, you know? I think Black Wall Street has really been sort of propped up that way in a lot of ways. And so for me, it was important to get past that, you know? And for me, I should honestly say that that was a learning experience for me. This is my first book. I'm not from the history background. And so I kind of come into it almost with more of the pat narrative of the journalist. I remember when I started the project, I kind of imagined Greenwood as this little diorama, and all these black folks in their nice suits would be walking around for me, and I'd tell their story. And that was kind of the story I wanted to tell. And I remember I was reading these newspapers from early Greenwood, and I saw like, oh, like there was poverty in Greenwood. Oh, the streets weren't paved. Oh, the lights weren't on. And so I had to kind of figure out a new paradigm for how to understand the place. And talking to folks there made me think that too. And so I'm really glad that I was able to sort of push past the mythology to tell a true human story. 'Cause I think when you tell a human story too in history, and in fact it's more relatable to folks than that mythology is.
When you decided to write this book, and by the way, what prompted you? I mean, there are a million stories. I do know you wrote a magazine article for which you were nominated for an award about the Rosewood Massacre, but is that what drew you to Tulsa?
No, it was a very specific moment, actually. I used to live in Atlanta. I used to be a technology reporter, just totally off topic of this. But I was working as a tech reporter in Atlanta, and I was having lunch with a friend of mine, high school friend, and the film 12 Years a Slave came up. My friend hadn't seen the movie, didn't want to see it, because he was tired of only seeing black folks being brutalized and all these historical depictions. And so this was about 2017 or so. And so I asked my friend, have you ever heard of Black Wall Street, example of us being successful? My friend had never heard of it. And he himself is a young Black entrepreneur trying to make it. And so in my head, I thought, well, this guy who's trying to really follow the Greenwood model, never even heard of Greenwood, that's a problem. And so from that moment, I decided that diving into the story more deeply made sense. And that's kind of where I got that idea about, oh, this is going to be a Black excellence book, And I think that when I dove into the true history, it became more authentic and dynamic. But I'm glad that I was both able to carry those business success stories with so many other dynamics in the neighborhood.
Well, our time is wrapping up, but I do want you to hit the urban renewal piece was huge for me because, again, breaking out of that amber, the story goes on.
Yeah.
And the story's going on right now. The Department of Justice has just started, if you hadn't heard, a new investigation into Tulsa, which hopefully that will finally support the reparations piece. But one of the things that you said is one thing to fight the local power brokers, but the entire federal government much harder to combat in terms of just the pulling out of the rug of the community that kept trying to rebuild. Just a little bit about that, if you will, as we wrap up here.
Sure. So it makes you think about this woman named Mabel Little. Mabel Little was a beautician in Greenwood. She came there in the 1910s. She was so good that she claimed that she could save bald men's receding hairlines, in fact. So Mabel's home was destroyed during the race massacre, but she rebuilt it. She had a house on Greenwood Avenue, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s. Fast forward to 1971, Tulsa Urban Renewal Authority, with the backing of Congress, has decided that they're going to, quote unquote, renew the neighborhood, and Mabel's got to go. And so in my research, I found a lot of these letters from the Urban Renewal Authority to residents like Mabel, telling them that they had to get out of here, but kind of construing things as if it was for their own good. And so, they'd have these sort of city planning meetings, much like the ones that happen today. Mabel comes to a meeting, and Mabel gets up to the podium at one of these meetings and says that, I was here in 1921, and what y'all are doing here now is worse than then. So to have somebody who actually withstood the massacre, survived, and then said that this process of urban renewal is actually more destructive and traumatic, then it tells you all you need to know about the devastating impact that those events had.
In just a second, Barbara Savage and Chad Williams are going to join us here for you to ask questions of us. But before we turn that piece happens, I just want you to acknowledge the fabulous Victor Lukerson. So while they're getting the chairs to come up so that you can ask questions of all of the finalists, all of the winners, I just want you to know that my mode of behavior is a question, not a commentary. All right? Okay. Now, some people may have cards. Do people have cards? Anybody have cards? All right, let's get on with the questions. There we go. There we go. For your question.
Thank you so much. My question touches on both books, Victor and Chad. It's about that discussion that was between Du Bois and Mr. Washington. Mr. Washington saying, we just have to work hard and the white people will recognize us and we will liberate ourselves by our work. Mr. Du Bois was like, not that far. No, so the question, today we talk a lot about wealth building, just lower your head and work hard. What is the mood in Tulsa today? How can we address the fact that we work hard, but everything can be erased in 36 hours?
Well, I guess I'll speak on that a little bit. I know that, I brought that question to some folks in Greenwood about the Washington Du Bois debate. And so Jim Goodwin, the guy I mentioned who owns a newspaper and who I sort of was able to finally have a good relationship with, he once told me that he explained the dynamics of, Du Bois is trying to go straight from here to there, straight up. We're going to go this way, right? And then Washington is saying, let's stay on this level and keep doing this. And he said that progress is the hypotenuse of a triangle. You have to do both. And so I think for a lot of us, it's not really about being able to follow the exact philosophy of one person. It's more about taking what you can for your own life and navigating it that way. So that's what I've learned from a lot of really wise people like Mr. Goodwin.
Sure, I'll just quickly add to that. I mean, the relationship between Du Bois and Washington, very complex. But In relation to my book, Du Bois supported an American entry into World War I. He called for African Americans to close ranks and forget their special grievances, to support their country unconditionally, right? And he was accused of being a Booker T. Washington. He was accused of being a traitor to the race by his harshest critics. And that was a decision that he deeply believed in the moment. He believed that black people could be 100% Americans. And he was wrong. He saw up close, he traveled to France, he saw the destruction, the catastrophe of war and of white supremacy. And he realized that it would take more than just faith and hope and optimism, a belief, a blind belief in America for democracy to be a reality. It was something that you had to fight for. And that disillusionment that he wrestled with for really the rest of his life, as I chronicle in the book, is what motivated him to be the incredible freedom fighter that he was. And I think that's really one of the ultimate lessons that we could take away from a Du Bois, that even when he was wrong, he was able to learn from it and grow from it and to apply his convictions to advancing the struggles for black people and other oppressed peoples.
As the next questioner comes up, I just want to remind you all that the common thread between all of these books, aside from the history, is the fabulous writing. The writing is incredible, so you can use these books actually as lessons on writing. That's so good. Just want to put that out there. Oh, here's a hand.
Hi, I'm fascinated about the story of the teacher that you have portrayed, and I'm just curious as to what lesson you think the subject can pass to other teachers and those who value education so much.
Yes, do I need, I think I'm okay.
No. Yeah.
Thank you for the question. Merce Tate was a great teacher, and she also had a whole string of firsts. So she was the first African American to earn a degree at Oxford in international relations in the 1930s. First black woman to get a doctorate in government from Harvard, and then spent the bulk of her academic career at Howard after a stint at Bennett. And I say all that to say she was in fact a great teacher, and I'm glad that you started there because she was also an extraordinary scholar, published 5 books, dozens and dozens of articles in international relations and diplomatic history. And I think the overriding lesson from having worked on her life as a black woman scholar now, looking back at her life, it's an extraordinarily inspiring story, both her stubbornness, her commitment to this quest for education, which is as foundational a theme in African American history as any, from the struggle for literacy. And then here's someone who not only wants to teach, but also wants to do what we have done, which is to try to contribute some new knowledge, as it were. And so for me, it's a universal story about resilience and perseverance and being the kind of woman who is unafraid of being accused of being independent, bossy, all of the things that are usually assigned to strong, smart women who don't know how to defer and who are bold in everything that they do. So that life is certainly was part of what carried me through in the days when I really wanted to kind of shut the door and move away. So thank you for the question.
That's the end of our question time. I just want to remind you, Merce Tate, Built from the Fire, W.E.B. Du Bois, and World War I.
Well, thank you, Callie Crossley, so much. She has been with us, I think, since the beginning, right? It is always an informative discussion. Thank you to our authors. Let's give them another round of applause. So we encourage you to join us on Saturday, October 26th at the Boston Book Festival, where I'll be moderating a panel on Black resistance and leadership featuring some of our MAAH Stone Book Award alumni, Thulani Davis, Eddie Glaude, Kelly Carter-Jackson, and Sarah Lewis. We also want to thank the Stone Foundation, the Stone family, Jim and Kathy Stone, Sonia Placette, our jurors, our honorary jurors, Handel and Haydn Society, Dana Whiteside, our technical crew who has made it possible for folks to live stream in, Audio Chemist and Evolution Sound. Now, an evening like this is not possible without a hard-working team. And this next person I'm gonna recognize hates it when I do this. She'll forgive me, because we love her. You do not understand how much work gets done with a very small team and a wonderful, dynamic, highly organized person. And she's clocking me because I'm running over time, but that's okay. Please give a special thanks to Pam Waterman, and you gotta step up, Pam. Pam is our director of the Stone Book Awards, to also Michelle Samplin Salgado, the staff of the Stone Foundation and the Museum of African American History, as well as our volunteers. MAAH staff, raise your hand. Volunteers, raise your hand. They're all working. You'll see them downstairs. Now, a little technicals. If you were lucky enough to receive a golden ticket, you can head down to the Susan Paul Room to retrieve one of tonight's books. Don't make me repeat myself. One, you cannot just take all three, but there's good news. We are selling copies as well, so you can purchase a copy of the other books as well, so you can go home with all three tonight. Yes, cheer for that. Also, don't forget to pick up an essential part of our Book Awards celebration, our cookies. Those are downstairs as well. So we thank you for tuning in. We thank you for coming out tonight to celebrate excellent scholarship in African American history and culture. Thank you for watching online, and we'll see everybody next year.